You know how sometimes you think you've got someone all figured out, like you really know them, but then something happens that just completely changes everything?
Oh, absolutely. Like you lift the veil and there's a whole other story going on underneath.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we're dealing with today, diving into the case of Harold Allen.
This is one of those cases that just grabs you right from the start.
It's got it all, right? Alleged poisoning, family secrets, betrayal, you name it.
Like something ripped straight from the headlines.
So, to set the stage, Harold Allen was your average guy, loved his motorcycles, bluegrass music, big fan of spending time with his wife, Marcia. Seems like a pretty regular life, right?
Yeah, picture of domestic bliss from the outside looking in.
Exactly. At least that's what everyone thought until December of 2022 when Harold suddenly passed away.
And at the time, it seemed pretty cut and dry.
Yeah, the doctor said it was complications from his diabetes, case closed.
Until, of course, it wasn't.
Because 9 months later, a completely unrelated event turned this whole case upside down.
Talk about a plot twist.
Right. So there was a burglary at Marcia's home, and one of the burglars, a guy named Stephen White, he drops a bombshell on the police.
Okay, gotta know. What do you say?
He tells them that Marcia, along with her daughter Ashley Jones, they poisoned Harold.
Whoa, hold on. You've got a convicted burglar pointing fingers. I mean, how reliable can that be?
And that's the theme, right? It sounds pretty far-fetched, right?
It does.
But you got to remember, investigators, they have to follow every lead.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially in a case that was already considered closed. Any new info could be that missing piece of the puzzle.
Exactly. And in this case, that tip about poisoning, it opened up a whole can of worms.
Like what? What'd they find?
Well, the police, they started digging into Marcia's online activity, and let's just say some things popped up that were a little suspicious.
Like, what kind of suspicious?
Like Googling how much foxglove is fatal.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's not exactly something you search for just out of curiosity.
And it gets worse. She also searched for things like, how long does it take to die from foxglove?
See, now that sends chills down my spine. And you mentioned foxglove. A lot of people might not even realize how dangerous that plant really is.
Yeah, it's one of those things. You see it in gardens. It's got those pretty bell-shaped flowers.
Right? Seems totally harmless.
But people don't realize hidden inside those pretty flowers is a deadly toxin.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's not like it's some rare, hard-to-find
Ah,
plant.
right. It's pretty common, which is kind of scary if you think about it.
It really makes you wonder what else could be lurking in our own backyards.
It really does. And as the police kept digging, they found even more disturbing stuff. Turns out Marcia and Ashley had been texting each other, and let's just say these weren't your typical mother-daughter chats.
Oh no, what were they saying?
They were talking about different poisons, like foxglove, obviously, but also water hemlock, even stuff like antifreeze,
Antifreeze, you mean like the stuff you put in your car?
the one and only, also known as ethylene glycol. And it's more common in poisoning cases than you might think.
Really? I wouldn't even know where to start with that.
Well, apparently it's got this slightly sweet taste, which makes it easy to disguise in food or drinks.
Wow, so it's like easily accessible and easy to hide.
Exactly. And the other scary thing about ethylene glycol is that it can be hard to detect, especially if someone already has other health problems, like Harold did with his diabetes.
Makes you think, how many times have doctors maybe misdiagnosed something because the symptoms were so similar to another condition?
It's definitely a chilling thought, right? And get this, they weren't just casually mentioning these poisons like, oh, have you heard of this one?
They were actually, what, like cooking up a plan?
It really seems that way. In the text, they actually lay out a timeline, even suggesting this might not have been the first attempt.
Wait, are you serious? They had tried to poison him before.
It seems crazy, right? There are messages that seem to imply they might have tried to poison him before, and he even ended up in the hospital.
Wow, I mean, can you imagine going to the hospital and not even realizing someone you love might have put you there?
That's the thing about poison, right? It can be so insidious. And, the more the police read through these messages, the more disturbing they became.
I bet. Knowing what we know now, it's hard to imagine those texts being anything but chilling.
One message in particular really stood out. It was from Marcia, and she wrote, I am irritated and can't sleep peacefully. I wish it would reach its climax and be done, lol.
Okay, the lull at the end there, that's just, I don't even have words.
It's bone chilling, right?
Seriously, how can you be talking about someone's potential death someone you supposedly love, and then just throw in and lol like it's nothing.
It's like their moral compass was completely shattered.
It's hard to even wrap your head around, you know? Like, how does someone even get to that point?
It's one of those things that reminds you how little we might actually understand about the dark side of human nature.
No kidding.
Mm.
And, you think about everything we've talked about, the poison, the planning, the cold-hearted messages. You'd think it would be pretty open and shut, right?
You would think. But remember Ashley, the daughter.
Yeah, the one who was texting with her mom about all the.
Right. Well, she initially confessed to being involved.
Well, there you go then.
But, and this is a big but, she tried to downplay her role, saying she was basically just following her mom's lead.
So she was like throwing her mom under the bus.
Pretty much. But then another set of text messages popped up, and let's just say Ashley's story didn't quite hold up.
You mean like she wasn't being totally truthful?
Not even close. In these new messages, she's bragging about being the mastermind behind the whole thing, even saying her mom wasn't smart enough to pull it off without her.
Whoa. Okay, so a complete 180 from her first story.
Exactly. So now it's a question of which version of Ashley is the real one? Was she a manipulated pawn or a cold-blooded puppet master?
I mean, talk about a tangled web, right?
Yeah.
I'm guessing the police had their work cut out for them trying to sort through all of that.
It gets even trickier because remember how we were talking about potential motives earlier?
You mean like, why would they even do such a thing?
Exactly, and it seems like money might have been a major factor, and it gets even wilder. While the police were trying to track down Marcia, get her side of the story, things took another unexpected turn.
Don't tell me she pulled a vanishing act.
Worse, they found her dead in her home.
Oh no, you mean?
Apparent suicide.
Wow. Talk about a bombshell. So what happened? Did she feel guilty about Harold? Was she scared of going to prison? We'll never really know, will we?
It's one of those things we may never have an answer for. But it adds another layer of tragedy to this whole thing, don't you think?
Absolutely. It's a reminder that there were real lives impacted by all of this.
And with Marcia gone, the focus shifted to Ashley, who was already facing charges from that whole burglary incident. But with those text messages coming to light, things got a lot more serious.
Yeah, those messages definitely painted a different picture of her involvement.
To say the least. Those charges were upgraded to murder. And if you thought we were done with the twists and turns, buckle up.
There's more? You're kidding.
Remember how we were talking about money being a possible motive?
Yeah, the whole inheritance thing.
Right. Well, get this. Years before Harold died, Ashley's ex-husband, Tyson, he passed away too. And at the time, people thought it was a little strange.
Strange how?
Well, for starters, it happened just a few days after he received a sizable inheritance.
Okay, now that is suspicious.
And to make matters worse, Tyson's family, they had him cremated before an autopsy could be done.
So there's no way to know for sure if there was foul play involved.
Exactly. It's like adding another piece to the puzzle, but this piece just raises more questions.
It makes you wonder if we're even dealing with the same puzzle anymore. But that's how these cases go sometimes, right? You start pulling on one thread and it just unravels this whole other story you never could have imagined.
It's like that saying, truth is stranger than fiction, right?
Yeah.
Because honestly, who could make this stuff up?
I know, right? And it makes you think, in this day and age, with all the technology we have, our phones, computers, it's like we're leaving a trail of breadcrumbs wherever we go.
Or digital footprints.
Exactly. And in this case, those digital footprints, those text messages, those Google searches, they became crucial pieces of evidence.
It's a reminder that in the digital age, almost nothing stays hidden forever.
And it makes you wonder what else is out there, hidden in plain sight, just waiting to be discovered.
It definitely makes you think twice about things. But unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground, but there are still so many unanswered questions surrounding the case of Harold Allen.
Like, was Ashley the mastermind behind everything? Was it all about the money? And what about her ex-husband, Tyson? Was his death just a tragic coincidence, or was there something more sinister at play?
Unfortunately, we may never have all the answers. But one thing's for sure, this case is a stark reminder that sometimes the most unsettling mysteries are those that remain unsolved.
Leaves you questioning everything, doesn't it?
It really does. It reminds us that things aren't always what they seem, and sometimes the people closest to us can harbor the darkest secrets. But hey, on that cheerful note, we want to thank you for joining us for this particularly chilling deep dive. We'll be back next week with another look into the dark side of human nature. Until then, sleep tight if you can. Oh, and before we go, I did want to mention that we made a small donation to the International Bluegrass Music Association in Harold's memory. He seemed like a man who appreciated the simple things in life, like a good bluegrass tune.